The alley reeked of wet pavement and fear. A masked cyclist lunged at me, knife glinting in the dim light. I had one shot to grab the evidence before it vanished. My fingers clenched the burner phone Sarah gave me, the only proof that could clear my name. If I lost this, Evelyn Vance would bury me for good. Then the blade came down. I twisted, barely dodging. But the real horror wasn't the attack. It was the email flashing on my screen. The one that proved Evelyn had been investigated years ago. And now she was coming for me. The Seattle rain was not a cleansing thing. It was a cold, invasive weight that turned the world into a blur of gray concrete and oily puddles. Maya Sterling crouched in the narrow gap between a rusted dumpster and a brick wall, her oversized black hoodie pulled low. The fabric was damp, clinging to her shoulders with a persistent chill that made her teeth chatter. She ignored the shivering, her focus entirely on the rugged laptop balanced on her knees. The screen's blue light reflected in her sharp, intelligent eyes, casting long shadows against the brickwork. She wasn't just hiding. She was hunting. The university server was a fortress of invisible walls, but Maya had found a crack. Her fingers moved with a rhythmic precision, tapping the keys in bursts of 4, tap, 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 matching the movement of the small river stone she kept in her pocket. She was digging for the metadata of Dr. Evelyn Vance's latest published thesis. The air in the alley smelled of wet cardboard and old grease, a sharp contrast to the sterile, academic world Vance inhabited. A line of green text flickered across her screen. Maya held her breath. There it was. The digital fingerprints showed that the files had been altered months after they were supposedly finalized. The metadata didn't lie. Vance had systematically scrubbed the original author's name and replaced it with her own, leaving behind a trail of electronic breadcrumbs that only someone as obsessed as Maya could find. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a calculated theft of intellectual property. Maya felt a surge of cold triumph. She had the baseline. She had the proof that the woman who had charmed the university board was nothing more than a high-end thief. As the download bar reached the end, the laptop's fan let out a low, dying whine, the heat from the vent warming her frozen fingertips for a fleeting second. She snapped the lid shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet alley. She needed to move. The university security wasn't just cameras and guards. It was a digital web, and she had just tugged on one of the strands. Maya slipped out of the alley, her boots splashing through a puddle that tasted of salt and city grit. She headed toward the Neon Bean, a diner 3 blocks away, where the smell of burnt coffee and cheap bacon acted as a sensory shield against the world outside. The bell above the door gave a tinny jingle as she entered, the sudden warmth of the interior hitting her like a physical blow. Sarah Johnson was already there, tucked into a corner booth with a messy ponytail and ink-stained fingers. Sarah didn't look up as Maya slid into the plastic seat, but she did push a small, nondescript cardboard box across the table. "You're late," Sarah muttered, her voice a rapid-fire staccato. "I've been sitting here so long the waitress thinks I'm a runaway. That's 3,104. 3,104 what?" Maya asked, her hand instinctively going to her pocket to tap the riverstone. "Apologies for taking up space without ordering more than a side of fries." Sarah finally looked up, her eyes wide and frantic. "Maya, you need to be careful. I was poking around the campus security logs. Dr. Vance isn't just watching the library. She's requested access to the geo-tracking on the student Wi-Fi. She's looking for you, specifically your MAC address." Maya felt a prickle of unease. She opened the box to find a burner phone, its screen pristine and cold. I used the alleyway. I didn't touch the campus network. Doesn't matter, Sarah whispered, leaning in so close Maya could smell the peppermint on her breath. She's smart. She knows you won't stop. This phone is clean, no GPS, no link to your name. Use it for everything. If you even think about logging into your student portal from your laptop, you're dead. She's turned the whole campus into a trap. Maya gripped the burner phone, the plastic edges digging into her palm. She looked out the window at the rain-slicked street. The Space Needle loomed in the distance, looking slightly tilted, as if the whole city were leaning toward her, waiting for her to trip. Sarah's fear was infectious, a low-frequency hum that vibrated in the table between them. Maya realized then that she wasn't just fighting for her grades anymore. She was being hunted by someone who owned the very ground she stood on. Leaving the diner felt like stepping back into a war zone. Maya kept her head down, her backpack heavy with the weight of the laptop and the stolen data. She took the long way back to the dorms, cutting through the old humanities corridor, a place of high ceilings and echoing stone floors that smelled of floor wax and ancient dust. The corridor was dimly lit, the shadows stretching out like long, thin fingers. Maya's footsteps sounded too loud, a rhythmic clack, clack, clack that seemed to be followed by a faint second echo. She stopped. The echo didn't. From the darkness near the lecture hall, a figure emerged. It was a cyclist, face hidden behind a dark visor and a heavy gray helmet. The bike's tires hissed against the polished stone as the rider accelerated. There was no warning, just the sudden, violent rush of air. The rider lunged, a gloved hand grabbing for the strap of Maya's backpack. "No!" Maya shrieked, the sound tearing through the quiet hall. She didn't run. She swung. She used the momentum of the heavy bag, pivoting on her heel and slamming the laptop-laden backpack into the cyclist's chest. The impact was a dull thud that vibrated up her arms. The rider wobbled, the bike's front wheels skidding on the slick floor. Maya didn't wait to see if they'd fall. She lunged forward, her fingers catching on a piece of paper sticking out of the rider's jacket pocket as they scrambled for balance. She tore the paper away and bolted toward the emergency exit. The heavy metal door crashed open, the cold rain hitting her face as she scrambled into the night. She didn't stop until she was blocks away, huddled under the awning of a closed bookstore. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She smoothed out the crumpled paper. It was a printout of an internal faculty email from 5 years ago, addressed to a dean at a different university. It detailed an investigation into Dr. Evelyn Vance for systematic manipulation of primary source data. The email had been marked confidential and deleted, yet here it was. The cyclist hadn't been a random thief. They were carrying evidence, or perhaps they were a warning. Maya stared at the name at the bottom of the email. It was the first physical proof that Evelyn Vance had a history, a trail of wreckage that she had tried to burn. Maya knew she couldn't go back to the dorms. Not tonight. She needed a fortress, a place where the rules of the university didn't apply. She thought of her father's mansion in the suburbs of Bellevue. Michael Sterling was a man of influence, a man whose very name acted as a shield. He would listen. He had to. She spent the last of her cash on a rideshare, her eyes glued to the rearview mirror the entire time. The suburban streets were quiet, lined with perfectly manicured lawns and houses that looked like they were made of gold and glass. Her father's house was the largest of them all, a sprawling estate that smelled of cedar and expensive security. Subverted beat 1.4. Maya reached the massive mahogany front door, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She fumbled for her key, her fingers trembling so hard she almost dropped it. The metal was icy, a stark reminder of the world she was trying to escape. She just needed to get inside. Once she showed her father the metadata and the email, the nightmare would end. Michael would call his lawyers, the university board would be notified, and Evelyn Vance would be excised from their lives like a tumor. The door swung open before she could even turn the lock. Maya? Her father stood in the foyer, his face bathed in the warm, amber glow of the chandelier. He looked tired, but his smile was genuine. "You're soaking wet, honey. What on earth happened?" "Dad," Maya choked out, her voice cracking. "I have it. I have the proof. Vance, she's—" "Slow down," Michael said, stepping forward to take her dripping backpack. "You're safe now. We were just talking about you." Maya froze. "We?" From the shadows of the living room, a woman stepped into the light. She was wearing a cream-colored silk dress that flowed like water. Her silver blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her eyes, those unblinking, predatory eyes, locked onto Maya's. "Hello, Maya," Evelyn Vance said, her voice a low, melodic crawl. "Your father told me you might stop by. I'm so glad you're here to share the news." Maya's world tilted. The air in the foyer suddenly felt too thin to breathe. She looked at her father, then back to Evelyn. "What is she doing here?" Michael reached out and took Evelyn's hand, his fingers interlacing with hers in a gesture of sickening intimacy. "Maya, I know this is a surprise, but Evelyn and I, well, we've decided not to wait. I asked her to marry me this evening. She's going to be part of the family." Evelyn stepped closer, the scent of her sharp, metallic peppermint perfume filling Maya's lungs. She reached out and touched Maya's forearm, her grip firm, like a claim of ownership. "We're going to be so close, Maya. A real family at last." The relief Maya had felt moments ago curdled into a cold, paralyzing dread. The predator wasn't just at the gates. She had been invited into the master bedroom. Maya's safe haven had been hollowed out, turned into a trap with her father as the unwitting bait. She looked at the backpack in her father's hand, the bag containing all her evidence, and realized she had just handed her only weapon to the enemy's accomplice. The following days were a slow-motion descent into a waking nightmare. The Sterling Mansion, once a place of childhood memories, became a prison of polished marble and silent cameras. Evelyn didn't waste any time. She moved in within 48 hours, her designer luggage filling the guest suites like a conquering army's supplies. Maya sat at the long glass dining table, the clink of silver against porcelain sounding like a ticking clock. Across from her, Evelyn was dabbing at her corner of her mouth with a linen napkin. Michael sat at the head, looking back and forth between them with a hopeful, desperate expression. "Michael, darling," Evelyn began, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "I hate to bring this up during breakfast, but I'm worried. I found these on the local student forums last night." She slid a tablet across the table to Michael. Maya leaned forward, her heart sinking. On the screen were a series of posts from an anonymous account detailing Evelyn's daily schedule, her car's license plate, and photos taken from the bushes outside her office. "This is stalking, Michael," Evelyn whispered, her eyes welling with practiced tears. "And the IP address. The university tech department traced it back to this house, to Maya's laptop." "That's a lie," Maya shouted, her chair screeching against the floor as she stood. "I didn't post those. She's framing me." Michael's face went pale. He looked at the tablet, then at Maya, his eyes full of a soul-crushing disappointment. "Maya, How could you? After everything I've done to give you a stable home? Dad, look at the dates. I was with Sarah during those times. She's manipulating the logs. I think, Evelyn said, her voice turning cold and structural, that for everyone's safety, we need to upgrade the house. We need to ensure that Maya isn't tempted to escalate this obsession. By that evening, the house hummed with a new, aggressive energy. Technicians in gray jumpsuits drilled into the crown molding, installing sleek, black domes that followed Maya's every movement. The smart security system was updated. Maya's thumbprint no longer worked on the front door or the kitchen pantry. She was restricted to her wing of the house, her every breath recorded by the unblinking eyes in the ceiling. The mansion wasn't a home anymore. It was a high-tech cage designed to strip her of her agency. Desperation drove Maya to the home office at 3 in the morning. She knew the risks, but she had to get a keylogger onto the main computer. If she could capture Evelyn's passwords, she could find the source of the fake stalking logs. The office smelled of mahogany and the ozone of high-end electronics. Maya crept to the desk, her bare feet silent on the Persian rug. She inserted the small USB drive, her heart thumping, 1, 2, 3, 4, against her ribs. The screen flickered to life, the blue glow illuminating the panic in her eyes. Loading. 40%, 70%. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered by a sharp, electronic chirp. The red light on the wall-mounted sensor began to pulse. System breach. A calm, female voice announced through the hidden speakers. Unauthorized access detected in Study A. Maya scrambled for the USB drive, her fingers fumbling with a small plastic casing. She yanked it out just as footsteps thundered in the hallway. She dived behind the heavy velvet curtains, pressing her back against the cold glass of the window. The door swung open. The overhead lights flared to life, blindingly bright. "Who's in here?" Michael's voice was ragged with sleep and fear. Maya peered through the crack in the curtains. Evelyn was standing behind him, wrapped in a silk robe, her face a mask of predatory calm. She didn't look around the room. She looked directly at the curtains. She knew. "It was probably just a power surge, Michael," Evelyn said, her eyes never leaving Maya's hiding spot. "The system is very sensitive. Let's go back to bed. We'll check the logs in the morning." She lingered for a second after Michael turned away, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips. She wasn't just catching Maya. She was playing with her, letting the fear marinate. The next morning, Maya found her world even smaller. She tried to leave her room for breakfast, but the heavy oak door wouldn't budge. She pulled the handle, but there was no mechanical click, only the stubborn resistance of a deadbolt engaged by a computer. "Dad!" she screamed, pounding her fists against the wood. "Open the door!" Silence was her only answer. She turned back to her bed, her mind racing, and that's when she saw it. Tucked inside her pillowcase, the corner of something gold and glittering was peeking out. She pulled it out. It was her mother's heirloom watch, a delicate piece of 1920s craftsmanship that Michael kept in a locked glass case in the library. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Evelyn hadn't just locked her in. She had set the stage for the final act. An hour later, the door clicked open. Michael stood there, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him stood 2 men in suits Maya didn't recognize. "Where is it, Maya?" Michael asked, his voice trembling. "Where is what, Dad?" "Don't lie to me." "Evelyn saw the library case was smashed this morning. She said she saw you wandering near there last night." He didn't wait for her to answer. He lunged for the bed and ripped the pillow away. The gold watch tumbled onto the floor, the glass face shattering against the hardwood with a sound like a dying gasp. "I didn't take it," Maya cried, her voice echoing in the small room. "She put it there. She's trying to make you think I'm crazy." Michael picked up the broken watch, his eyes filling with tears. "This was your mother's. The only thing I had left of her that wasn't a memory. You stole it just to hurt me? Because you hate Evelyn that much? Dad, listen to me." "No," Michael snapped, his voice hard as iron. "I've listened enough. Evelyn was right. You're not well, Maya. You're acting out, stealing, stalking. You need professional help. There's a facility in the hills, a place where you can get the correction you clearly need." He walked out, the two men in suits closing the door behind him. The lock clicked back into place, a final, mechanical rejection. Maya sank to the floor, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap-tap of her stone against the floorboards, the only thing keeping her from screaming. She was losing. Every move she made was being anticipated and redirected. She needed a way out, but the walls were closing in, and the person she trusted most was the one holding the key. The basement of the Sterling mansion was a labyrinth of concrete and humming pipes, a place where the luxury of the upper floors died away. Maya had managed to slip out of her room through the laundry chute, a desperate, bruising crawl that left her skin scraped and her hoodie torn. She needed to reach the external circuit breaker, to kill the power to the smart locks for just long enough to bolt for the woods. The laundry room smelled cloyingly of lavender fabric softener, a thick, artificial scent that coated the back of her throat. The massive industrial dryers hummed like sleeping beasts. "Going somewhere, Maya?" The voice was like a razor blade wrapped in silk. Maya spun around. Evelyn was leaning against the doorway, a heavy glass vase held loosely in her right hand. The strobe of the basement's flickering fluorescent light made her look like a ghost. "Get out of my way," Maya said, her voice shaking despite her best efforts. Evelyn stepped into the room, the heels of her shoes clicking sharply against the concrete. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "You're a persistent little thing, aren't you? Like a termite chewing on a foundation. But eventually, the house always wins." She lunged forward with a speed that caught Maya off guard, pinning her against the vibrating side of a dryer. The heat from the machine seeped into Maya's back, but the glass vase pressed against her throat was ice cold. "Do you know what happens to glass when it's under too much pressure, Maya?" Evelyn whispered, her breath smelling of peppermint and malice. "It doesn't just break, it shatters. It turns into 1,000 tiny needles that you can never quite clean up." She pressed the rim of the vase harder into Maya's skin. "I could kill you right now and tell Michael you attacked me. He'd believe me. He'd weep for you, of course, but he'd believe me. You're a troubled girl after all, a danger to yourself and others." "He'll find out," Maya gasped, her hands clutching at Evelyn's wrists. "Sarah has the files. She knows everything." Evelyn laughed, a low, haunting sound that vibrated through the pipes. "Sarah? You mean the girl who's currently being investigated for hacking the university registrar? I think Sarah has her own problems to worry about." She pulled back, the vase leaving a red ring on Maya's neck. "Stay in your cage, Maya. It's safer for everyone. If you try to leave again, I won't just break your reputation. I'll break your father. I'll bleed his accounts dry and leave him with nothing but the memory of a daughter who lost her mind." Evelyn turned and walked away, her humming, that low funeral dirge, echoing in the concrete chamber long after she was gone. Maya slumped against the dryer, her breath coming in ragged sobs. She pulled the burner phone from her pocket, her fingers trembling as she dialed Sarah's number. Maya? Sarah's voice was a frantic whisper. I've been trying to get through. I found something. The guy who attacked you in the hallway? The cyclist? What about him? He's not a thief, Maya. His name is David Miller. He was a grad student at Evelyn's last university. She accused him of harassment 5 years ago, destroyed his career, and then she hired him. I found payroll records under a shell company. He's her assistant. She doesn't just ruin people, Maya. She breaks them until they have nowhere else to go, and then she uses them as tools. Maya looked at the cold concrete walls. She wasn't just fighting a woman. She was fighting a system of human wreckage. Evelyn was a collector of ghosts, and Maya was next on the list. The house felt different over the next few days. Heavier, as if the very air were being compressed. The engagement party was only 48 hours away, and the mansion was a whirlwind of florists, caterers, and security guards. Maya was no longer locked in her room. She was monitored. A guard stood at the end of her hallway, and her meals were brought to her on a silver tray, like a condemned prisoner's last requests. She knew she had one chance. Evelyn's guest suite was in the north wing, a place Michael rarely entered out of a misplaced sense of privacy. If Evelyn was embezzling, the records had to be physical. She was too smart to keep them on a cloud server that a girl like Maya could hack. Maya waited until the house settled into the deep, artificial quiet of 3 in the morning. She used a plastic shim she'd carved from a credit card to bypass the simple latch on her window, dropping onto the manicured lawn below. The grass was wet with dew, the cold seeping into her socks instantly. She crept along the side of the house, staying in the long shadows cast by the security lights. The north wing's balcony was reachable via a sturdy trellis of climbing roses. The thorns bit into her palms, drawing beads of blood that felt hot against her skin. But she didn't make a sound. She slipped into Evelyn's suite through the unlocked French doors. The room smelled of expensive lilies and that sharp, metallic peppermint. It was a cold, sterile space, devoid of any personal touches. Maya went straight for the luggage. In the back of a designer leather suitcase, tucked beneath a false floor, she felt the hard edge of a book. She pulled it out. It was a heavy, black-bound ledger. She opened it, her penlight illuminating rows of numbers and names. It wasn't just academic fraud. Evelyn was diverting research grants from Michael's firm into a series of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, moved in small, untraceable increments. This was the smoking gun. This was the reason Evelyn wanted to marry Michael, to have legal access to the rest of his fortune. Maya tucked the ledger into her hoodie and turned to leave. The lights flared on. Evelyn was standing by the door, her hand on the switch. She wasn't wearing a robe this time. She was fully dressed in a sharp, black suit, as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" Evelyn said, her voice devoid of its usual melodic lilt. It was flat and dangerous. "I have the ledger, Evelyn," Maya said, her heart hammering against the book in her chest. "It's over. I'm going to the police." "You're going nowhere." Maya bolted for the balcony, but Evelyn was faster. She lunged, her fingers catching the hood of Maya's sweatshirt and yanking her back. Maya swung the heavy ledger, catching Evelyn in the shoulder, but the older woman didn't flinch. She grabbed Maya's wrist and twisted, the bone groaning under the pressure. They tumbled out of the suite and into the hallway, a chaotic blur of limbs and gasping breaths. Maya managed to break free and sprint toward the garage. the only exit that wasn't monitored by a live guard. The garage was a cavern of oil-slicked concrete and the silent, predatory shapes of Michael's SUVs. Maya fumbled for the manual release on the side door, but a hand slammed against the wood next to her head. Evelyn grabbed Maya by the hair and slammed her head against the frame of a black Range Rover. A white-hot flash of pain exploded behind Maya's eyes. The world tilted, the floor rushing up to meet her. She felt the ledger being ripped from her hands. "You're a nuisance, Maya," Evelyn hissed, standing over her. A small, insignificant crack in a very large wall. The garage door opened. Michael stepped in, his face silhouetted against the moonlight. "Dad," Maya gasped, her vision blurred. "The ledger. She's stealing from you." Subverted beat 1.13. Maya tried to push herself up, her hand slipping on the polished floor. She looked at her father, waiting for the moment of realization, the moment he would see the blood on her forehead and the predatory look in Evelyn's eyes. He would see the book in Evelyn's hand. He would finally understand. Michael walked toward them, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. He didn't look at the ledger. He didn't even look at the blood on the car door. He looked at Maya with a kind of weary, hollowed-out pity that was worse than anger. "It's okay, Evelyn," Michael said, his voice sounding like it was coming from a great distance. "I have them." He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a sheaf of papers. He didn't hand them to Maya. He handed them to Evelyn. "What is that?" Maya whispered, her stomach twisting into a cold knot. "These are the involuntary commitment papers, Maya," Michael said, his voice cracking. "I've spent all night with the lawyers and the doctors, after what you did to the library. And now, breaking into Evelyn's room, attacking her. I can't protect you from yourself anymore." "Dad, no, she attacked me. Look at my head." "I see it, Maya," Michael said, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. "I see how far you're willing to go to hurt yourself just to frame this poor woman. You hit your own head against the car. I saw you through the security feed. You're self-harming, honey. You're sick." Evelyn stepped forward and tucked the ledger into the waistband of her trousers, then placed a comforting hand on Michael's shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, Michael. It's the only way she'll get better." Maya looked up at the security camera in the corner of the garage. The red light was blinking. She realized then that the system hadn't been hacked. It had been choreographed. Evelyn had known Maya would come for the ledger. She had set the feed to record only the moments that made Maya look like the aggressor. "No," Maya whimpered, as the two men in suits from earlier stepped out of the shadows. "Dad, please." Michael turned away, unable to watch as they lifted Maya from the floor. "The transport will be here after the party, Evelyn. Let's just get through the night." The world went dark as one of the men pressed a cloth to Maya's face, the cloying scent of chemicals drowning out the smell of lavender and rain. Maya woke up in her own room, but it felt like a tomb. The windows had been fitted with reinforced bars from the outside, and the heavy oak door was now reinforced with a steel plating she hadn't noticed before. Her head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache, and when she touched her forehead, her fingers came away with dried, flaky blood. She was alone. Her laptop was gone. Her burner phone was gone. Even the small river stone had been taken from her pocket. She sat on the edge of the bed, the silence of the mansion pressing in on her. Downstairs, she could hear the faint, muffled sounds of the orchestra tuning their instruments. The engagement party. The celebration of her own erasure. The door clicked open. Evelyn stepped in, holding a glass of water and a small white pill. She looked radiant, her skin glowing under the soft lamplight. "Drink," Evelyn said, her voice a motherly coo. I'm not taking anything from you, Maya rasped. Evelyn set the glass on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. She leaned in close, her eyes wide and unblinking. You know, Maya, I actually admire you. Most people break much sooner. But you have that spark. It's a shame it has to be extinguished. My father will find out, Maya said, though the words felt hollow even to her. Your father, Evelyn laughed, is currently downstairs showing off the new digital security wing I helped him fund. He thinks I'm a saint for dealing with your condition. By the time the sun comes up, you'll be in a private ward in the Cascades. The staff there are very thorough. You'll be so sedated you won't remember your own name, let alone a black ledger. She stood up and smoothed her skirts. The transport van is already in the driveway. They're just waiting for the final toast. Enjoy the music, Maya. It's the last thing you'll hear for a very long time. She walked out, the lock clicking with a finality that sounded like a coffin lid closing. Maya stood up, her legs shaky. She looked out the window. Below, the driveway was filled with luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Teslas. And there, at the very end, was a plain white van with no markings. She looked at the desk lamp. It was a heavy brass thing with a thick copper cord. She remembered her mother's voice from a lifetime ago, explaining how a circuit worked. A loop, Maya. Everything is a loop. If you break the loop, the power has nowhere to go. Maya grabbed the lamp and yanked the cord from the wall. She used a pair of nail clippers she'd hidden in her mattress to strip the plastic casing, exposing the bright, shimmering copper. She wasn't going to break out. She was going to break the system. She walked to the smart lock panel next to the door. It was a sleek, touch-sensitive screen that glowed with a soft blue light. She pressed the exposed copper wire against the charging port and the metal frame of the door simultaneously. A sharp blue spark erupted. The smell of scorched ozone filled the room. The panel shrieked, a high-pitched electronic death rattle, and then went dark. The lock clicked. Maya pushed the door open. The hallway was empty, the guard presumably downstairs enjoying the catering. She didn't run for the stairs. She ran for the office. The mansion's intercom system was controlled by a master console in Michael's study. It was a safety home feature, designed to broadcast emergency alerts to every room and the outdoor speakers in case of fire or intrusion. Maya slipped into the study. The room was dark, the only light coming from the moon and the glowing status lights of the console. She reached for the microphone, then stopped. She heard footsteps. She dived behind the large mahogany desk just as the door opened. I told you, Michael, I just need to grab my speech, Evelyn's voice said. She sounded annoyed. I'll wait in the hall, Michael's voice replied. The guests are waiting for the toast. Evelyn entered the room, the scent of her peppermint perfume preceding her. She walked to the desk, her hand reaching for a folder. Maya didn't move. She waited until Evelyn was inches away. Then she reached up and grabbed the master broadcast switch on the side of the desk, flipping it to all zones. I know you're in here, Maya, Evelyn said, her voice dropping the mask of kindness. I can smell your fear. It's pathetic, really. Did you think a little spark would save you? Maya stood up, her face pale but her eyes burning. I don't need to be saved, Evelyn. I just need you to talk. Evelyn laughed, the sound booming through the house, though she didn't realize it. Talk? About what? How I've spent the last 6 months systematically hollowed out your father's life. How I've moved $4 million into accounts you'll never find. Or maybe how I'm going to have you lobotomized by Tuesday. She stepped around the desk, her face contorted into a mask of narcissistic venom. You're nothing, Maya. You're a footnote. Your mother died of failure, and you'll die a lunatic. Michael doesn't love you, doesn't. He loves the version of me I've built for him. He'll sign anything I put in front of him because he's weak. He's a soft, pathetic man who needs a hand to hold. And I'm the one holding it while I bleed him dry. Is that all? Maya asked, her voice steady. It's enough, Evelyn hissed, reaching out to grab Maya's throat. The door to the study burst open. Michael stood there, his face a mask of absolute, shattering horror. Behind him stood the university dean and 2 police officers who had been hired as security for the party. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint, tinny echo of Evelyn's own voice, still vibrating from the speakers in the hallway. Michael, Evelyn gasped, her hand dropping from Maya's neck. I was just... She's hallucinating, I heard you, Evelyn, Michael said, his voice a low, dangerous growl she had never heard before. The whole neighborhood heard you. The police officers stepped forward, the metallic clink of handcuffs sounding like the most beautiful music Maya had ever heard. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights and legal statements. Evelyn was led away in the back of a squad car, her silver blonde hair disheveled, her face finally showing the cracks she had warned Maya about. The ledger was recovered from her suite, along with a black book of leverage she had held over university faculty. The next morning, the mansion felt empty. The cameras had been turned off, the black domes looking like blind eyes. Maya stood in her room, packing her backpack. Her laptop had been returned, the metadata she'd worked so hard for now part of a criminal evidence file. A knock came at the door. Michael stood there, looking older, his tailored suit rumpled. Maya, he said, his voice hesitant. The university, the dean called. Your scholarship is being fully restored. They're issuing a public apology for the administrative error. That's good, Dad, Maya said, not looking up from her bag. I've booked a trip, for us, to the coast. I thought we could talk, really talk. I'm so sorry, Maya. I should have trusted you. I was so afraid of being alone that Maya zipped her bag and finally looked at him. She saw the grocery list peeking out of his wallet, the milk, eggs, aspirin he rewrote every Sunday. She saw a man who was still looking for a hand to hold. I can't, Dad, she said softly. I spent my whole life looking for your protection. I thought if I stayed in this house, if I followed your rules, I'd be safe. But the only person who saved me was me. She picked up her bag and walked past him. Where are you going? Michael asked, following her to the foyer. To the dorms, Maya said. I have a lot of work to catch up on, and Sarah needs help with her legal fees. She reached the front door, the massive mahogany door that had once felt like a barrier. She opened it herself. The rain had stopped, the Seattle air smelling of damp earth and salt. The sun was peeking through the clouds, reflecting off the puddles in long, shimmering lines. Michael followed her to the porch. Let me drive you at least. It's a long walk. Maya looked at the Space Needle in the distance. From here, it didn't look tilted at all. It looked perfectly straight, a needle of steel piercing the gray sky. No thanks, Dad, Maya said, stepping out onto the gravel. I'd rather walk. She didn't look back. She kept her hand in her pocket, her fingers brushing against the empty space where the stone used to be. She didn't need the rhythm anymore. She had her own pace now. As she walked toward the university, the sound of her boots against the wet pavement was steady, strong, and entirely her own.